Another key city fell to the Taliban Sunday as American-trained government forces continue to collapse and surrender. Now the U.S. Embassy is urging all Americans to leave the country immediately. Taliban fighters seized the strategic capital of northern Afghanistan's Kunduz province Sunday, the fourth provincial capital to fall to the Taliban in less than a week. The swift advances come as U.S. and NATO troops complete their pullout after nearly 2 decades in the country. Thousands of Afghan civilians have died in the fighting. This woman says, "My husband was martyred and then we left our village. My niece's husband was also martyred." Some Taliban fighters are already secretly inside the capital of Kabul, waging an assassination campaign. The director of the government media center was shot and killed Friday, just days after an assassination attempt on the defense minister. After the U.S. spent billions of dollars training and shoring up Afghan forces, several pro-government commanders have surrendered to the Taliban without a fight. Similar scenes happened when the U.S. pulled out of Iraq in 2008. Eventually, the rise of the ISIS terror group forced the U.S. to return. The former U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan, Ryan Crocker, told ABC he still expects a strong defense from pro-government forces in the large cities, but that the U.S. must speed up efforts to get Afghans who helped American forces, like translators, out of the country.
What needs to be done right now is to ramp up the evacuation, get more flights in faster.
The Taliban will kill everybody, and they will torture them in front of their family and kill them.
Former missionary to Afghanistan and author John Weaver says Muslim converts to Christianity are in special danger.
There are a few thousand Muslim background believers who are following Jesus now. They love Jesus. They meet in houses. It's a small group type of a venue. It is slowly spreading, but it is very dangerous, very difficult for them.
In a clear sign of panic from Washington, the U.S. dispatched B-52 bombers and Spectre gunships to Afghanistan Friday to try to hold the Taliban at bay, killing as many as 500 of the fighters. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
It's a tragedy, ladies and gentlemen. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is with us now. Chris, what will the wider consequences be if the Taliban retakes Afghanistan?
Well, Pat, right now, Iran, Russia, China, they're all taking notes about what's happening here. Their pullout, the U.S. pullout projects weakness right now, and weakness is a very ominous thing in the Middle East when strength really matters. I think right now you're also going to see, perhaps, tragically, that Afghanistan is going to be a safe haven for groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS. If the Taliban continues its assault throughout this time. So I think the wider consequences are dire for U.S. allies that are looking at what's happening. We reached out earlier today to former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, and he compared this to maybe the pullout of Vietnam when Saigon fell. And so it projects weakness, and it's very distressing for U.S. allies in the region, and especially Israel.
Chris, what goes on? Is that will become a haven like ISIS, and they will then begin? Where will they go from Afghanistan? Are they going to go after Pakistan? Who's next?
Well, it could be, tragically, like I said, a safe haven like it was before 9/11, where al-Qaeda set up their headquarters. It also is the advantage of Iran. Iran is looking closely at what's happening here. The U.S. military used Afghanistan as sort of eyes on the ground there. They could fly drones pretty safely into Iran to keep eyes on Iran. So if they continue this onslaught and continue to capture some of these cities, these larger cities in Afghanistan, and then eventually, God forbid, Kabul, then it really makes a huge difference and another safe haven for these terror groups, and emboldens these terror groups as well, Pat.
Well, heaven help the poor women. It's against the law to train women. Women are beaten. I mean, it's just horrible. Let's talk about the conflict between Lebanon and Israel. Lebanon is on the brink of collapse. Why are Hezbollah and other radicals provoking Israel by firing missiles.
Well, as you know, this is probably the first time since 2006 Hezbollah fired at least about 19 missiles into northern Israel. You remember, Pat, we were up there in the Second Lebanon War in 2006, so it has been 15 years since this kind of an onslaught. I think there's a couple of things going on. First of all, I think Iran's new president, Raisi, is testing the new government right now, and Hezbollah is flexing its muscles. And also the danger right now inside Lebanon, and we've talked about this, is that right now Lebanon is really on the verge of a failed state, could implode economically, socially, and who's poised to take over? It could be Hezbollah, which is the most organized, the most powerful group in Lebanon right now. So we hope and pray that nothing happens, that Hezbollah would take over this state.
Oh, Chris, I always ask you to project things that are maybe outside your consciousness, but what do you think Israel will do? I mean, are they going to think about a preemptive strike to contain that situation?
Well, both that and the Iranian nuclear program. Benny Gantz, your friend, we interviewed him back in the 2006 Second Lebanon War. He says right now that Israel is about 10 weeks away from enriched uranium to weapons grade. So it remains to be seen what and if Israel will do anything. They're also looking at the U.S. negotiating with Iran, the renewal of the Iranian nuclear program. And that could be a time when Israel feels it does need to take a preemptive strike.
Well, thank you.